The alarm on my wrist screamed a warning half a second before the ceiling above me cracked open with light, and I threw myself sideways into the princess as a beam of white energy tore through the spot where I had been standing. We hit the floor together, hard, and I felt her twin heartbeats hammering against my arm as I pulled her behind a stone pillar. Somewhere above us, the ministers who had been arguing about trade routes only minutes earlier were now screaming and scrambling for the exits. This was not how the evening was supposed to go. My name is Daniel Fletcher, and 3 months ago I was just a translator assigned to a border outpost, a small human voice in a very large alien empire. Tonight I was crouched on a marble floor with the crown princess of Vale Prime pressed against my side, both of us breathing hard while the palace burned around us. "Stay down," I told her, though she did not need to be told twice. Isvara was no soldier, but she was not foolish either. Her eyes, wide and dark, tracked every movement in the smoke-filled hall, with a sharpness that surprised me even now. "Who is attacking us?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. I did not have an answer yet. I only had instinct, and instinct told me to move. We ran through a side corridor as another blast tore through the ceiling behind us, raining chunks of stone onto the floor where we had just been standing. The guards who should have been protecting this wing were nowhere in sight, and that absence frightened me more than the explosions did. "This way," Isvara said, pulling me toward a narrow servants' passage hidden behind a tapestry. She knew this palace better than I ever would. Every secret door and forgotten hallway carved into her memory since childhood. I followed her without question, trusting her instincts the way she had trusted mine only moments before. The passage was dark and cold, lit only by a thin strip of emergency lighting along the floor. We moved quickly, our footsteps echoing against stone walls that had stood for 1,000 years and had never, as far as I knew, witnessed an attack like this one. "It has to be the Korathi," Isvara whispered as we ran. "They have wanted this alliance broken since the day it was proposed. If humanity and Vale Prime unite, their trade routes through the Outer Rim become worthless." It made sense. The Korathi had opposed the treaty from the very first meeting, sending representatives who smiled with their mouths but never with their eyes. I had noticed it back then, and said nothing, because saying something would have meant accusing a foreign power of hostility without proof. Now the proof was falling from the ceiling in the form of energy blasts. We reached the end of the passage and found ourselves in a small garden courtyard, open to the night sky. Smoke drifted across the twin moons above us, and somewhere in the distance I could still hear the shouting of guards trying to organize a defense that had come far too late. "We need to reach the lower levels," Isvara said. "There is a transport hidden beneath the east wing. If we can get there, we can reach the capital garrison and bring back real soldiers." "And if we can't?" I asked. She looked at me, and for a moment the fear in her eyes softened into something else, something steadier. "Then we do not stop trying. My people have survived worse than one night of fire, Daniel. We have survived because we never simply gave up." Her words settled something in my chest, a kind of quiet courage that I had not expected to find in the middle of an attack. I nodded, and we moved again, keeping to the shadows along the courtyard wall. We had almost reached the far gate when 3 figures dropped from the rooftop above us, landing in a crouch with weapons already raised. Korathi soldiers, their armor dark and sharp-edged, their faces hidden behind visors that glowed faint red in the smoke. There was no time to run. There was barely time to think. I grabbed a fallen guard's weapon from the ground beside a broken statue and fired without hesitation, catching the nearest soldier in the shoulder before he could aim. It was not a clean shot, and my hands shook as I pulled the trigger, but it bought us a single second, and a single second was enough. "Move," I shouted, pulling Isvara toward the gate as the remaining 2 soldiers opened fire behind us. Stone chips exploded around our feet, and I felt a burning line cross my arm where a blast grazed too close, but I did not stop, and neither did she. We burst through the gate into a narrow alley between 2 towers, and I slammed a heavy door shut behind us, jamming a metal bar through the handles to buy us a few more seconds. My arm throbbed where the shot had caught me, but the wound was shallow, and there was no time to worry about it now. "You are hurt," Isvara said, reaching for my arm despite the danger still pressing in on every side of us. "It can wait," I told her, though the words came out sharper than I meant them to. We need to keep moving. She nodded, but I saw something pass across her face, something that looked almost like guilt. This is because of me, she said quietly, as we hurried down the alley. Because of the Alliance. Because I wanted it so badly that I never once considered how many enemies it would create. You wanted peace, I said. That is not something to apologize for. Peace has a price, she answered. Tonight it seems the price is blood. We reached the entrance to the lower levels, just as the sound of pursuing footsteps echoed behind us. I pushed the hidden panel Isvara pointed to, and it slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. We dropped down it together, sealing the panel behind us, just as heavy fists began pounding against the door we had barred minutes earlier. The staircase led to a long tunnel, lit by faint blue lights, embedded in the walls. Our footsteps were the only sound now, quick and urgent, echoing off stone that had not seen daylight in centuries. I could feel my heart still racing from the fight above, and beside me, Isvara's breathing had grown ragged, though she pushed forward without complaint. How much further? I asked. Not far, she said. The transport chamber lies just ahead. If the Korathi have not already found it. My stomach tightened at the thought, but there was nothing to do except keep moving. We rounded a final corner and found the chamber exactly where she had promised, a small circular room with a single sleek vessel resting in its center, untouched and waiting. Isvara moved quickly to the control panel, her fingers dancing across symbols I could not read, and the vessel's engines began to hum to life. I kept watch at the entrance, weapon raised, listening for any sound of pursuit, but for the moment, at least, we seemed to be alone. It is ready, she called, and I climbed inside just as the first distant echo of footsteps reached the tunnel behind us. The doors sealed shut, and the vessel lifted smoothly into the air, carrying us up through a hidden shaft that opened into the night sky far beyond the palace walls. Below us, I could see the palace still burning in places, smoke curling upward into the moonlight, but the worst of the fighting seemed to be fading as guards finally regained control of the grounds. We were safe, at least for now, drifting silently above a city that had nearly lost its future in a single terrible night. Isvara sat back from the controls once we had leveled out, and for the first time since the attack began, her shoulders relaxed, just slightly. She turned to look at me, and there was something raw in her expression, something she had been holding back through every second of our escape. I thought we were going to die back there, she admitted quietly. We didn't, I said. That's what matters. No, she said, shaking her head. What matters is that when the ceiling opened and that first blast came down, you did not think of running. You thought of me. You threw yourself toward danger instead of away from it, without a single moment of hesitation. I did not know how to answer that, so I said nothing, and she did not seem to need an answer. She simply reached over and took my hand, holding it the way someone holds onto the one steady thing left in a night that had taken everything else and shaken it loose. We flew in silence for a while after that, the vessel gliding low over dark hills toward the distant lights of the garrison. My arm still ached where the blast had grazed it, and my legs felt heavy with the last of the adrenaline draining out of my body, but sitting there beside her, I felt something else too, something that had nothing to do with fear. When this is over, I said finally, breaking the silence. When the Alliance is safe and the Korathi answer for tonight, I want to ask you something. Something I have been thinking about for a long time now, long before tonight ever happened. Isvara turned to look at me, and even in the dim light of the cabin, I could see the question forming behind her eyes before I even spoke it aloud. I want to marry you, I said, quiet and certain, the words finally free after weeks of carrying them unspoken. For a moment, she said nothing at all, and my heart climbed into my throat, waiting for her answer. Then she turned fully toward me, her expression steady despite everything the night had thrown at us, and she reached out to take my other hand as well. Then let tonight be the reason the ministers finally stop arguing about whether our two peoples belong together, she said. Because I already know the answer. I have known it since long before the fire started. Yes, Daniel. My answer has always been yes. Outside the window, the garrison lights grew closer, steady and golden against the dark hills, and somewhere behind us, the smoke of the palace slowly began to clear from the night sky, carrying away with it every doubt either of us had ever carried about what we meant to each other.